What's up, everybody? Today I'll make a cozy. We're gonna make some yummy homemade stock. Check it out. In the midst of kitchen renovations, I figured I would throw out a quick video just to show you what I do with trying to be more efficient in the kitchen, and also get another kitchen video out there just because I like to make my own stock. So check this out. This is what I'm working with today. Let me preface that by saying that first of all, you're probably gonna notice that my eyes are purple because I got new glasses, but also got a fresh new haircut. Boom, summer fade. Anyways, point of the story is that I like to use up my scrap pieces either in the compost, which we've just started doing with our home garden just this past year. But I also take a lot of the scrap pieces over here. So let's check this out. So I'm making a chicken stock, but I'm making it with Latin flavors because I have, as you can see here, I got pieces of jalapeno, I have some onions, chicken carcass, some poblano peppers, bell peppers, garlic pieces like the nubs that I cut off and stuff like that. And then these sticks and twigs, these are epazote. So I take the epazote parts and I put those in there as well. I've also got some pieces of peppers, which were a little bit too dry in my opinion. So as opposed to putting them into a sauce or a salsa, marinade, whatever the case may be, I'm just throwing the scrap pieces up in here just so I can still utilize them without throwing them away. Just to give you a little peek about what I'm talking about, what I save and don't save. When you're talking about onions, if you got these little hairs on here or whatever, I just like to kind of pick those off, throw those away. And you don't want your stock bag to be a garbage heap, right? So this little guy right here, probably not gonna save this. This can go in the compost. All right, so I've removed the little hairs and I have, or roots, I guess they're roots, you know, whatever. And then all I do with this, right, I'll take this piece off, and this, prime candidate for saving in the stock bag, right? So I got my bag right here. I'm already working on another Mexican stock. Boom, we'll throw this in with the others. Whoop. So then we go through, right, and then you just prep just like you would. But instead of throwing away these outer shells and stuff like that, this, boom, right in the stock bag. Outer piece right there. And that way you don't have to be like, you know, you're watching like the food show sitcom thing. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to have like, you know, the onion that's the size of a watermelon because they get the best produce. And then they take a layer or two off of here, bloop, throw it in the thing, right? And you're like, cool, you don't have to worry about taking off too many layers because A, your onion is the size of a watermelon, and B, it's fine because you're reusing it in your stock bag. And even the parts that you don't, oh, one got away from me. Come on, coz. And even still, you're just gonna go through it, right? Bust it out. Chop, 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 chop. Here, let's just go ahead and do it. You just go ahead, blip, 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 blip. Slice, 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 slice. And then, nubbin, throw it in there. Throw it in there. Now, one thing about your garlic, right? Same thing. I don't want to save this trash. Never scrape with your business end of your blade either. Always scrape with the back, just like a bench scraper. So, a couple things going on here, right? Do keep the nubbin, all right? I'll keep the nubbin, throw it in there. Do not keep, I do not keep the germ. This is what I'm talking about, right? There we go. So this little guy, I wouldn't worry about that little guy. Chop, 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 chop. Whenever I chop garlic like this, I don't use the claw, I use a finger. And I just, no harm, no foul, see? Whoop. Unless you're making foul, and then delicious, roast it up, you know what I mean? Now let's talk about carrots. Carrots are a different situation because some folks will tell you, hey, I've got garden fresh carrots, I'm gonna throw them in there. That's great. Me, what I do, I don't get, I mean, I'm sure they're from a garden somewhere in the world, but you take your carrot pieces, right, just like this. I don't know why I brought two. All I need is one for demonstration. But just take these pieces and throw these in the stock bag as well, right? That way, I mean, you're going to strain everything out anyways. So, I mean, you're going to want to rinse and wash your veg depending on what kind you get, organic or not. But, you know, there we go. Nubbin. I'm going to take this off just because it has a janky piece right there. Boom, stock bag. And all I do with this is I fill it up just with bottled water. I have bottled water, which is going to give me a cleaner taste. I would use the tap, but only if I ran it through a filter. Even though like it's a small batch, but this will make like a couple quarts, maybe a quart and a half. Anyways, I don't want those flavors in my stuff. So a couple things that I like to do whenever I'm working with a homemade stock is I'll try to cook this down a little bit. All this stuff is just, like I said, you know, little pieces here and there. But I'll cook it just to get it up to temperature because I take a bag and I just freeze it. So I'll keep all my stuff, I'll label it, right? This is my mech stock. So you can do this with a variety of things. You can make traditional chicken stock or beef stock by keeping your bones, keeping your pieces whenever you're, trimming up chickens, whole chicken you're gonna break down. You get a whole pack of, like, let's say chicken thighs, right? Bone in, take all the bones, put them in a bag, save them for later. That way, whenever you go to meal prep later on in the week, all you have is just your boneless chicken thighs, and then you can break it out for the meal time. So I've kind of talked about my Mexican stock already, but let's talk about just the backbone for any stock, right? So the easiest one would be vegetable, right? So in roots of French tradition, vegetable stock, or any stock really, is carrots, celery, and onions with some aromatics and salt, pepper. So carrots, we talked about that. Onions, we talked about that. Celery, I don't really have any with me now, but I will cut the leaves off like this. And then if you're peeling it away from the base or whatever, generally I just take the part that's closest to the root, or I'll just take the whole root off whenever I get it if I know that I'm going to use a lot of celery for that week or whatever. Put it right in the stock bag. Cartoons are always great. So let's talk about just a regular meat type stock: chicken, beef, pork. Chicken has a lot of availability compared to beef and pork. So let's talk about the latter first. So if I know that I'm going to make a beef stock or a pork stock, then I'm going to look for either something at the market that says like neck bones, bones for stock, bones for soup, or I will get something like oxtail for beef, for example. Something that's going to have a lot of collagen that'll break down into a yummy stock. Chicken, you have more variety. You can get a rotisserie chicken from the store, and then it's already cooked, it's already developed a depth of flavor anyways. Now, unless you get something like a lemon pepper chicken, probably don't want to save that for stock unless you know that you're going to use those flavors later. That's a different story. But let's say you just get a traditional rotisserie chicken. What I like to do is I'll take out the meat from the bones and make tacos, make whatever, soup, save the bones, put them in the stock bag. If I'm going to buy a whole chicken and cut it up, or if I'm going to roast my own chicken or something like that, I can do a spatchcock for the grill, or I can spatchcock it for the oven. Either way, you gotta have to do some prep. And the main thing is getting the backbone out, like I showed in my Mexican stock. So if you have the chicken here, right, you're gonna have to use your kitchen shears and just and cut the back out, throw it, and stick it in your stock bag. If you've checked out my antique restoration video, you might have a butcher knife, which I do. So you can just chop, 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 and chop the bone out that way. And then if you're gonna try to take the breast out as well, you want to take the wishbone up near the neck, make a little slit, and then just go right down the keel. That'll split apart quite easily, and then you can save the breastbone that way if you're gonna butcher the whole chicken yourself. If you don't have time to butcher the chicken, or you don't wanna go to the hassle of taking a rotisserie chicken off of the bone and saving all those pieces for a stock, like let's say you're really pressed for time, you can just go to the store and get a pack of chicken wings. Chicken wings pack a lot of collagen, and that'll break down into yummy flavors and solidify that chicken flavor whenever it cooks down into gelatin, and it'll give you that lip smacky feel. Excellent. So if you're pressed for time, just buy a thing of chicken wings and throw them in there with your vegetables and aromatics. Now, you've got the basis for the veggie stock, you've got the basis for chicken meat stocks, right? My Latinx bag, I already talked about. I add chilies, I add peppers, garlic, lime pieces, no pith, and cilantro. Sometimes I'll even, at the very end, right, I'll throw in whole peppercorns, cumin, coriander seeds, stuff like that. Something that I know is going to be rooted in those flavors. If I'm working with something like an Asian-inspired stock, right, it's so hard to say an Asian stock because the flavors are so diverse. What does that mean, right? Is that Filipino? Is it Japanese? Is it Chinese? Is it Laos? Whatever. I will add my own stuff in order to make it that, like, Asian-inspired, for lack of a better phrase. For example, ginger right here, right? So if you're going to use ginger, a lot of recipes might say that, hey, you need to use the back of a spoon, use the back of the knife to get the skins off, chop it, that way you get the most out of your ginger without discarding a lot of the pieces. Well, if you know that you're gonna make a stock like I do, then I will take these little narbles, these little tiny ones, and I'll just pop those off and throw them into the stock bag. That way I can just cut the piece that I need, and if I need a 1-inch piece of ginger, if I do it like I would chop a carrot into like a little cube or something, I'm still going to utilize these nubbins for my stock anyways, for ramen or Thai curries or, you know, something soupy like that, right? So I will save those. I will save the garlic pieces. Again, lime is a pretty good flavor, lime zest rather. And then also the whites from scallions, right? I'll take those off. I'll take the roots and everything, throw all those into the my Asian bag. If I'm gonna go more of a Japanese route, then I will reinforce the stock with kombu. All right, so this is just seaweed, and it comes in a pack. You might, depending on what kind of brand you get, they might come in pieces like this. This is maybe like an inch wide and maybe like 6 inches long. But I'll take a whole one for like maybe if I'm gonna use 2 quarts, 2.5 quarts worth of water. I'll just take one of these, I'll throw the whole thing in there. It'll come out really easily, and it packs a ton of flavor. And one thing that goes along with kombu is bonita flakes. Now these are like just fish flakes, right? For lack of a better phrase, just to keep it simple. They're a bit smoky, so I will not reinforce those with smoky flavor enhancements that I'll talk about later. If I know that I'm gonna use like a Japanese dashi inspired stock, and I will add some of these only at the very end. I'm not gonna cook these along with the simmering on the stove or a pressure cooker. I just add these at the very end. So those are some of like little things that I do to enhance my stocks. So those are the ones that I'm working with are just a veggie, a meat stock like chicken, beef, and pork, a Latinx inspired flavor, or an Asian inspired flavor. So since this has come up to a boil, I'm gonna go ahead and add my water. I'm gonna let this simmer for about 1.5 to 2 hours. You don't have to go a full day with it. That's like a debunked myth, right? You don't have to simmer chicken broth for that long. Honestly, what I do sometimes, if I have, this batch would not fit in my Instant Pot, but I'll throw it in a pressure cooker. Cook it for 20 minutes on high, make sure that I don't overflow it, and just let the pressure come down naturally. I don't put it in water, I don't put it outside, I don't release that thingy. And that's it. You got a quick chicken broth, and it's flavorful, it's homemade, it's delicious. If you want to throw some other flavors to it, right, you can absolutely do that. Just kind of make it your own. And granted, this isn't like a trash pile, right? But I mean, it kind of is. And I know some chefs, they'll tell you your stock bag isn't a trash heap, but I'll tell you, after, you know, this was inspired during quarantine times, go figure. But whenever that is happening, I was like, you know what? At the time, right, people were like, I can't get ground beef, I don't know what's happening. And it's like, hey, people were scared. Use up what you got, man. This is like old school cooking, right? It's like depression cooking, not really. I mean, a lot of people were depressed during the corona times, but it's all right. We got through it. Boom. Stop, baby. So this guy's been going for a little while, about an hour and 40 minutes. And there we go. So you got nice broth going on. It's got a good color. Smells amazing. But one thing I wanted to show y'all before I sign this off, I got some cilantro stems. And these are just like straight up from the bottom of the thing. And I don't like to put them in there in the beginning with all the rest of the stuff. I like to let it sit and rest while it's coming down in temperature so I can work with it to strain and everything like that. Because some of the flavors in the stems are some of the most potent ones. And granted, if you have like, you know, folks in your family that, you know, it tastes like soap, they have that genetic deal where it makes it taste like soap, then by all means leave it out. But if you do want to add it, I would add it at the end, just so you get those bright flavors right at the end and it's not going to overcook to where it's like mush. Sort of like if you have a stock or whatever and you put parsley in it. If you put parsley at the very end, you're going to have that bright, fresh flavor. If you do it the whole 2 hours you're simmering that stock, you're not going to taste the parsley in there. It's going to get degraded over time. So there you go. I'm going to let this go, and then I'm going to strain it. What I like to do is, what I used to do was I would do like a few processes. I would get my strainer, like the colander, and I would get all the big stuff out and then try to squeeze as much of the juice out of the bones and the fat and the veggies as much as I could. That's why, you know, it's got to be warm enough to handle, not hot, because you're going to burn yourself. So be careful with that. So I would go in the colander, let that drain, get all the little stuff with a hand, like with a hand strainer, something more like this, right? Get all the bigger bits. And then you can even go as far down as using a cheesecloth. And I was using cheesecloth for the most part. Until I leveled up. I got one of these. Oh, that's my Fun Wish Factory. I got one of these. It's a nut bag. It's a nut bag for straining stuff. Like if you want to make nut milk, that's all good. I do sometimes make nut milk, so that's why I got 2 of them. One of them for nuts, this one is for stock. So I even labeled it on the bag, so I don't forget. For stock. I did it over the thing, right? Stock bag. Stock. 2 Ks. that's pretty much it, man. You know what I mean? You just, you simmer away. You got a nice lazy Sunday or something. You want to make some stock, go for it. And hopefully, like I said, right, you can do this. You can mold it to your own taste. I just gave you some, I just gave you a little taste. You got to pay for the rest. Next thing that I do, as far as any stock is concerned, is I throw in a little, like that, liquid smoke, and then a good clunk of fish sauce, all right? Now, some people are gonna be thinking like, well, what are you doing that for? And it's like, well, I like to have just a smidge of like, what is that? Whenever people are, you know, eating soups or eating stocks or a glaze or something that I make with the stock, and you're like, yeah, that's the fish sauce and liquid smoke. People don't really know that it's in there, but I do, and I think it adds just a little pop of flavor, especially the fish stock, because this stuff is just umami up the yin yang, right? Speaking of umami, and going back to roasting veggies, is using Marmite. Now you can use this on veggie stock, you can use this on chicken stock, beef stock, whatever, and a little of this stuff goes a long way, sort of like with the fish stock. This is just yeast extract. It's like beer, like it's part of like the brew making process, and this is just like the excess yeast extract. And so this gives you a really good roasty flavor. So you can mimic having like roasted a chicken using the roasted bones, or just roasting chicken bones, beef bones, pork bones in the oven prior to making your stock. And if you want to go to that level, then by all means go for it. I personally don't, unless I have the time, but I have to make time to do that. It's not like, hey, I'm just gonna make stock today on a whim. That's something you gotta plan ahead. Back to the story, is that this will mimic those roasty flavors. And in not a lot amount, not a long time. That's what I'm trying to say, good Lord. So this stuff, like I say, a little bit goes a long way, and it's quite salty, so be careful, season at the end. My boy, MSG, that's what's up. I don't think I need to say anything more about that, nor do I need to say anything more about my friend Salt. So, one thing I will say about these two folks is that you want to season at the end. Don't season before, and don't season in excess in the beginning. If you're gonna do a roasty process, by all means use a little bit of salt, extract that water, it's gonna expel out whenever it's roasting, all well and good. What you don't want to do is just add boom, boom, like a 5 pinch of salt in the beginning, because as it's cooking down, you might cook down some of that water, depending on how long you're going to use your stock for, and it can get too salty. Last thing is, and especially if you're doing a veggie stock where you're not going to extract a lot of gelatin from like chicken wings, beef bones, something like that, like neck bones, just get your little pack of gelatin. This is just powdered gelatin, and I like to add it at the end, even if I do use the chicken stock, just to add a little more gooeyfying nature to my stock. It also gives you that lip smacking feel, especially if you're doing this just strictly veggie stock. Now, if you're straight up vegan and you don't want to use gelatin because of animalness, that's fine. You can use something like agar-agar or something else that's going to solidify it, but it comes from plant-based type stuff. With agar-agar, you want to be sparing because, again, a little bit goes a long way. And unless you want veggie jelly, then I would go sparing on that. But those are some things that I use pretty much every time in order to enhance my flavor. So I've hit you with a lot of good information, and I hope it's not coming to the point where you're feeling overwhelmed. So much to the point to where you're like, hey dude, you're giving me a lot of cool ideas, and I would rather just go and buy a $3 box of stock while I'm already in the store, as opposed to doing this myself. I personally like doing it myself because I get to reuse all my pieces, right? It's another reuse in my book. And I get to control the flavor, I get to control the salt content, I get to experiment in the kitchen, which is always fun for me, and it doesn't really take a lot of effort. So I just wanted to try to recap some of the simple things just to have a checklist at the end, so to speak. So one thing, right, is whenever you're getting all your stuff together, use stuff that you like, that you know you like for traditional stocks, and it's scrap pieces, it's not trash. Other thing is things like the garlic germ, throw it away, right? I don't use those. You don't want to do that. Stuff that is going to affect people later on, like I mentioned cilantro, it kind of tastes soapy to some folks. If you know that that's a fact in your household, then just leave it out. Other things like, my biggest thing that I goofed up on was saving limes and other citrus. Save the zest, save the peels, don't save the pith, right? Only the zest, that's where the flavor comes from. I saved my Asian-inspired stock bag for making a Thai curry one time, and I put the entire lime in there after I juiced it, right? It was inedible, it was disgusting. Please learn from my mistake and don't do that. Other things for like fragile herbs like cilantro and parsley, leave those at the end, right after it's simmered. And speaking of that, you don't have to simmer all day, right? An hour and a half, 2 hours on the stovetop. If you have a pressure cooker, it's gonna be even faster, right? It should be just a, hey, I'm gonna do this in the background. It shouldn't be taking over your whole day. So it's simmering away, you're finishing up, let it cool while it's on the stovetop, or let the pressure come down naturally in your cooker. That way it's a little bit easier to handle with your hands so you're not burning yourself. Be careful. Strain as you see fit, right? You can go as far as just using a colander to get the big bits out, and then you can strain it as you use it coming out of the fridge after it's cooled, like whenever you're making a soup or whatever. Or you can go so far as using a nut milk bag, a Chemex filter, or if you want to go super crazy, like modernist cuisine, you can freeze it and then strain it after it's thawing out and just get a super clear like consomme. Up to you how far you want to take that. And as far as salting, I always salt at the very end and add my extra flavors. So I don't want to season all those scrap pieces that I've cooked for 2 hours only to throw those away because they've expelled all their flavors, right? That's the whole point. I salt after everything is just liquid. Liquid is in there, salt at the end, season it as you go. And then if you're using really salty things like fish sauce, Marmite, other things like MSG, make sure that you're controlling the salt flavor, because you don't want it to be inedible, but you don't want it to be like salty like you're gonna make pasta sauce, right? It shouldn't be as salty as the sea. And then finally, you've strained everything out, you're ready to put it in your containers. I personally like saving the fat so that it can create that fat cap. That way it kind of seals it, it preserves it, so to speak. And honestly, if you just put it in the fridge and just let the fat solidify, if you want to remove it and just not have to deal with it at all in the future, then solidify it in the fridge, it pops right off, and then you can throw the whole puck. It's like a hockey puck, just throw it away. So those are my big points as far as stock goes. The rest is just experimentation and flavor, so it's all you. Let's get back to the straining. All right, here we go. This is what I got left. I was using the rest to make some beans, a pot of beans. Took about 6 cups, and I got 1 quart left. So it turned out that I did have about 2.5 quarts worth of stock, and I got my stuff strained. Like I said, I used a nut bag to make it as clear as I could. And then you notice right here, right? You're gonna see this line right there. Boom, fat cap. That's a good thing, right? So that came off of my chicken carcass. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna help it keep it fresh too, because it's gonna solidify once it gets in the fridge. And if you're gonna freeze it, even better. But whenever you go to thaw it and everything, or if you just keep it in the fridge, it's gonna keep that fat cap up there. That way it'll help seal it in its container. So that way it doesn't get all gooey and gross over time. It'll kind of preserve itself in a way, but you don't want to keep it in there for like a month or so, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is fresh stuff, you want to use it pretty quickly. No preservatives, at least not in the stuff that I added at my house. About to pour this up. It's so sticky. It's sticking to my shibori napkin. Be confident in your pour too, man, because once it's in there, it's in there. Kaboom. That's it. Nothing but liquid gold. And it came from scraps. So that's nice. I'm gonna seal this up, and if you want to leave comments, questions, what would you do differently? What's something that I did that I kind of goofed up, or you're like, yo, that was a really good trick, I appreciate it. Let me know. We'll hit you up on the next one. Peace.